Just a few months ago, it seemed like Brawl Stars was on top of the world. They were producing banger updates with huge events, with a lot of progression, or huge collabs with very recognizable companies, and it seemed like everyone was playing the game. However, just a few months later, most of the player base has moved on to other games like Clash Royale, and most of the hype and popularity Brawl Stars once had has now vanished. In this video, I'm going to take a look at Brawl Stars' meteoric rise last year, and the massive momentum that they had, then how they managed to fumble it, and what they could possibly do to fix it. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to keep up with my videos. Second, join our Discord server. We have some fun stuff to do there, like our very own 1v1 rank called Gauntlet, where you can win Persephone Lumi and more Brawl Talk skins in the future, or simply just have fun. Finally, consider becoming a channel member if you're interested in supporting out the channel and have ample disposable income for some cool perks, like watching videos early or getting to decide on future video ideas. Let's start with the updates that really catapulted Brawl Stars into the mainstream. At this point, Brawl Stars was already slowly climbing up in popularity from the depths it was in 2023, but it was still not really that popular. However, two big updates were the catalyst for the beginning of a golden era in Brawl Stars. What were those two updates, you might ask? The addition of the ranked mode and the 100 Star Drops community event. On February 27, 2024, Brawl Stars dropped a complete rework to the old Power League system, replacing it with a competitive system called Ranked. Before this, Power League was an inaccessible, niche game mode for most of the player base, and nobody really beyond competitive players actually played the game mode seriously. To fix this, Brawl Stars dropped a huge rework to the mode. There was a huge increase in the amount of progression and cosmetics we gained from the mode, and the amount of grinding needed was reduced by a lot, overall making it much more accessible and played by the casual player base, which was the aim of this rework. However, while this was a great update, it alone wouldn't be really enough to increase the player base. So on March 21st, 2024, Brawl Stars announced an extremely ambitious event, the 100 Star Drops community event. This event would give out an absolutely massive amount of Star Drops based on the number of total Star Drops the community opened. So why was this event so special? Well, there was a few reasons. First and most importantly was the hype that this brought to the game. Giving out 100 free Star Drops was an absolutely massive amount, and it would definitely bring new and old players back to the game, who want a chance to get this once-in-a-lifetime amount of rewards. I mean, look at the crazy amount of views this video got despite not even being a Brawl Talk. And that brings me to my second point, the FOMO effect. This is basically when you see something super fun and exciting happening that may only happen once or rarely, so you want to join in and not miss out. This event definitely capitalized on that, as most people knew that an event giving out this much progression only happened once in a blue moon, and would likely not happen again for a long time. This definitely incentivized current players to keep playing, new players to come to the game to not miss out, and gave a great opportunity for returning players to return to the game. Next, the fact that the thing being given out was completely RNG based. We might hate on it, but you can't deny that RNG based things like Star Drops and Mega Boxes are so much more entertaining to open than something you already know the contents of. I mean, there's a reason the Chroma Credit event and the Mastery event, which I'll talk about in a bit, didn't generate the same hype as this 100 Star Drops event did. Besides, RNG aside, 100 Star Drops are also just a whole lot of progression. Finally, the community aspect of this event. The entire event was of course based around the community opening as many Star Drops as possible, so it encouraged players to be active and open as many Star Drops as they can. Furthermore, it also incentivized them to bring their friends into playing the game, to increase their chances of getting to the milestone of 100 Star Drops, which brought even more people to the game. And that wasn't all, as the opening 100 Star Drops was definitely an event that brought the community together even more, with friends opening the 100 Star Drops together to see what they get. which I personally did, and was extremely hyped to see in person, especially when we got legendary star drops. The timing of this update and community event was very strategic, but why? Well, as I said earlier, the 100 star drop event, due to a variety of reasons, brought a lot of new players into the game. However, there would of course be the problem of them losing interest once the event ended, and would return to not playing the game. However, would you look at that, a new, shiny, competitive, yet casual game mode for you to keep playing the game. This basically meant that the 100 star drop event would bring new people into the game, and the new ranked would keep people playing the game. Overall, this was a pretty genius strategy from Supercell, and contributed to the game seeing the highest levels of growth that it ever had seen in the entire history of the game. So obviously they were doing something right. Now that they had the big player base, they could either rest on their laurels or continue taking big risks to further increase the player base. And they chose the latter. On May 22nd, 2024, they dropped the Godzilla event. This was the very first time we have seen a collab at this scale. Of course, Brawl Stars had done collabs before, like with PSG, Browns and Friends, and more, but nothing on the scale of the Godzilla event. The Godzilla event brought a whole new RNG system, a huge club event with a new skin rarity, a new game mode, and insane power-ups to brawlers. In short, it was the biggest event we had seen to date, and it basically skyrocketed Brawl Stars to the next level of popularity. There were so many new things to do, and the game had so much hype coming off the back of the new ranked game mode and community event that it's no surprise Brawl Stars became as popular as it did at this time. Godzilla is a very popular IP, so it stands to reason that a lot of people were brought to the game with the allure of the collab with Godzilla. Furthermore, the whole egg system in the Godzilla update definitely brought more hype to the game, with the very low chances of getting the Godzilla buzz skins definitely attracting some gambling addicts to it. Overall, it was an event that was a lot of fun to the casual players, though there was a lot of pay-to-win elements, especially with mutations, that was mostly glossed over by a big portion of the player base at the time, but foreshadowed a deeply worrying trend. As for my own thoughts on the update, I absolutely despised it, especially the mutations, and was probably some of the least fun I've had in Brawl Stars, but no one asked to be fair. With these massive updates, how could Brawl Stars possibly keep the momentum? How else but by giving us 5 legendary star drops for free? On June 10, 2024, Brawl Stars announced the Thumbs Up for the Brawl event. This event was based around the community using the Thumbs Up pin to get rewards, such as double star drops, double mastery madness, and of course, 5 legendary star drops. For quite obvious reasons, this just further increased Brawl's popularity at this point. If there was any problem with the 100 star drop event, it was that it was kind of boring after a while, and the rewards for the most part weren't exciting. Of course, I would like you to keep in mind that I'm talking in the perspective of your average Brawl Stars player, not myself. Most of the star drops were rares, super rares, or epics, and gave a whole lot of nothing. However, that all changed with this community event. Every single star drop would have you on the edge of your seat because they were all legendary. In fact, you were likely to only get 2 or 3 legendaries in the 100 star drop event. So this was already better strictly in terms of legendary star drops you would be able to open. Once again, there was a big community factor to the event. Of course with the whole community thumbs up bar, but like with the 100 star drops, the whole opening drops with friends thing. And it applied even more in this scenario, where instead of having to sit through a lot of filler star drops, you would only see legendary star drops opening, which is definitely much more hype. With banger updates and community events back to back to back, the pressure was definitely on for Supercell to deliver with their summer update. And whether they lived up to that pressure is a question whose answer we'll find out. On June 22nd, 2024, Brawl Stars announced something huge in the Brawl Talk. They would be bringing back Mega Boxes for a limited time starting on July 12th. For obvious reasons, this sent shockwaves throughout the community. Since its very public removal on December 1st, 2022, Mega Boxes have always been one of the most requested features to return to the game. And while it was alive, it was one of the most iconic parts about Brawl Stars. So just imagine the hype around this event when it was revealed that boxes would be returning. Well, you don't need to imagine. The Brawl Talk video where this was announced got an utterly ridiculous 47 million views, which is to this day the most views that a Brawl Talk has ever gotten. With this amount of hype surrounding the game at this point, it felt like it should have been impossible to fumble. Yet, they kind of did. First off, they really screwed up with making the classic event happen basically a whole month after the announcement. Nothing drives up hype more than pure waiting. And that's what a lot of people were forced to do after the announcement of mega boxes. But that wasn't all, as when the mega boxes actually dropped, well, they were disappointing to say the least. Keep in mind, at this point, Brawl Stars had a lot of completely new players who were just starting out the game. So it stands to reason that they wouldn't feel any attachment or nostalgia to the new mega boxes. As for the people who did feel nostalgia, well, all they got was disappointment. The new mega boxes were a whole lot worse than the old ones, and it just felt like false advertising to call these mega boxes and not something like mega drops or star boxes. Also, to be fair to Supercell, a lot of people stop playing during the summer since they're going outside and touching grass, or going on vacation since school has stopped. But that doesn't make any of my points less true. So despite a great start to the summer and a lot of hype going into it, by the end of July and early August, they were almost back to where they started, managing to fumble all of their momentum, which would be foreshadowing for the future. However, on August 20th, a new community event would come to the game, based around the community selecting whether they wanted 10 star drops or 60 megaboxes. While not to the scale of the past two community events, this was still a pretty big and hype event, and caused a lot of discussion and arguments across the community, which I also participated in. Overall, it was just a good event, creating a lot of community participation while also giving a lot of free resources. This event, alongside the beginning of the reopening of schools around this time, helped Brawl Stars slowly climb back up in popularity throughout August, setting the stage for the September update. On August 24th, 2024, Brawl Stars announced that they would be doing a massive collaboration with Spongebob, similar to that of Godzilla a few months back, and the event would be starting a week or so after. This was absolutely huge for the game. We all know that Godzilla is a huge IP, and one of the most popular brands in the world, but even it barely compares to simply how popular SpongeBob is, but more importantly, how popular SpongeBob is to children and teenagers. Obviously, this attracted a lot of people into the game like the Godzilla update, and people were extremely hyped for it. The update brought a whole host of SpongeBob skins, new game modes, including an extremely popular Trio Showdown, and a unique twist to mutations called power-ups that was inarguably better. Finally, there was also a shop where you could buy a whole bunch of stuff, like cosmetics, progression, and even legendary and hypercharged drops. Overall, this was yet another super hype event, though cracks started to form within this new structure Brawl Stars was following. They were focusing basically completely on short-term profit, with ambitious community event after community event, and huge temporary events basically every update, with little focus on major permanent game changes, forgetting that the release of Ranked is what helped kickstart this whole boom in popularity. But who cares about all that? Brawl Stars is as popular as ever, and just collabed with SpongeBob, so what could go wrong? Well, nothing at first. In fact, things got even better. They finally dropped a significant permanent update with the Trophy Road rework, which was a bit controversial at the start, but overall I think we can say that it was a pretty good change. It definitely helped casual players progress with trophies much easier and smoother. Then on October 17th, Brawl Stars announced a new community event, the Dead Boxes event. This event gave multiple rewards like double star drops, a hypercharge drop, and most importantly, 10 dead boxes. The thing about dead boxes was that they were basically a supercharged, or let's say, hypercharged mega box. In other words, they gave a big amount of resources, and actually gave the same amount of hype, if not even more hype, than the old mega box did, not the imposter mega box that came back in the classic event. Overall, this event wasn't as huge as some of the earlier ones. However, it did represent something far more important than it seems. After the initial hype of the classic event in the summer, Brawl Stars dropped the ball, and their game suffered in popularity as a result, as they simply couldn't capitalize on the momentum they were building. However, they were careful to not make the same mistake twice. With the large amount of hype after the Spongebob event, Brawl Stars cooked up on both fronts, permanent and temporary, to satisfy both older and newer players, and keep them playing in preparation for the next big event. And oh boy, was it a big event. On October 26, 2024, Brawl Stars announced their most ambitious solo event to that point, the Angels vs Demons event. This event would go throughout the whole month of November basically, even to December. To say this was massive would be an understatement. And no, I'm not saying the other thing associated with massive. This event brought a whole ton of new things to the game, and it was so expansive that it honestly brought more new features than even the collab events. I made a video on why this event was so good a few weeks back, so if you want a more detailed explanation on this event, check it out. Anyway, this event brought a unique Angels and Demons theme, with players being sorted into either one every day. There was also Angel and Demon Star Drops, which were basically regular Star Drops but on steroids, and gave a lot more progression on average. They also introduced completely new abilities in another unique way, that was a lot less pay to win than mutations, and arguably less pay to win than the Spongebob power-ups. Finally, the contests, which gave absolutely bucketloads of resources to players who were successful in them. All in all, this was an action-packed, resource-packed event, and represented the peak of what Brawl Stars could offer in an event, which hadn't been reached before with some of their collab events. And this reflected in its popularity, with Brawl Stars becoming the most popular it ever was during this time period, and still maintaining crazy levels of popularity all throughout the month. At this point, Brawl Stars had mastered 3 important things that were necessary for keeping the game alive, which I'll talk more about later. Yes, that was completely shameless foreshadow bait. Yes, I just made up that term. Let's move on. With the huge success the game was seeing, and the strategic moves Supercell were making to ensure this success, it definitely felt like nothing could go wrong. Well, that was wrong. And it all started with the Buzzman itself. On December 8th, 2024, Brawl Stars announced that they were collaborating with another extremely famous IP in Toy Story to bring Buzz Lightyear into the game as the very first temporary brawler. And this is where it all went downhill. Not at first though, as there was a lot of hype surrounding the new collaboration, with a literal teaser for Brawl Talk getting over 20 million views. However, it all came crashing down on December 12th when Buzz Lightyear dropped. He was given for free, maxed out to everyone, which should have been great, yet was horrible. You literally couldn't escape him on any map, as he had 3 different modes he could choose from, with all of the modes being comfortable S-tier brawlers. And what happens when everyone has an S-tier brawler? If you want to play anything different, you're unintentionally throwing for your team. In fact, it became more unlikely to see a non-only Buzz Lightyear game rather than seeing one. If that doesn't tell you enough about this event, nothing will. Overall, the sheer brokenness and prevalence that Buzz Lightyear had during this time made the game feel horrible to play, and this of course reflected in how well the game was doing at the time. The game was starting to decline a lot in popularity, as people just didn't want to deal with this stupid temporary brawler being in every game and ruining it. However, Brawl Stars had always managed to bounce back from mediocre events in the past, like the classic Brawl event. So there was still hope the Pizza Planet event would be good, but would it be? The Pizza Planet event dropped on January 2nd, and was all about collecting pizza slices to spend in the shop. Once again, contest returned, but much worse this time, only giving mediocre amounts of pizza slices to maybe have a chance of getting an okay offer, compared to huge amounts of star drops we used to get in the Angels vs. Demons event. They also brought back the shop from the Krusty Krab days and reskinned it, but the offers were mostly mediocre, and overall kinda worse than the Spongebob event. I mean, overall, basically everything about this event was unoriginal and stole ideas from better events, while removing what made them so special to begin with. This event didn't really have any hype around it, coming right after the travesty that was Buzz Lightyear, nor did it really incentivize people to continue playing the game with the mediocre reskins of old features, and the absolutely awful progression given out at this time. Not to mention the multiple maintenance breaks and bugs all across this event that just severely hampered the playing experience for a lot of people. At this point, Brawl Stars was starting to see a big decline in popularity, with 2 back-to-back mediocre events that were not only unfun and unoriginal, but a step in the wrong direction from the permanent updates that Brawl Stars were starting to do. They were really fumbling the absolute high that they had with the Angels vs. Demons event, but not all hope was lost. The same thing happened, though of course to a lesser extent, with the Classic event the summer before, so they could still make a comeback, right? Well, they started off decently enough. On February 12th, they dropped a new community event based around something that's probably not that appropriate for children, which was a first kiss for Bo. The event was pretty interesting and divisive in the community, as nothing like this had been done before, and the community were the main ones who were deciding who the kiss went to. While it was interesting for people inside the community, it wasn't exactly that interesting for people outside of the game to be coming in. They would have no real connection to any of the brawlers to make decisions on who Bo should be dating, and the rewards weren't as huge or hype as the last few community events. I'm not saying they were bad, as they were giving out really good rewards, like giving out multiple hypercharged star drops, extra mastery madness, and a whole bunch of just other star drops. However, they don't really have the same ring to them as like 100 star drops, 5 legendary star drops, or 60 star drops in 10 megaboxes. I'm not saying that you have to do something that extreme all the time, but there should be a clear strategy of what type of community event you should be doing and when you should be doing them. If the game is doing really well, like it was during the time of dead boxes, then it's fine to just coast on the success and do a solid community event with good rewards, but nothing too crazy. However, if the game isn't doing that great, like it was at the time of the 100 star drop event or the 60 star drop versus 10 megabox event, you should probably going all out to try and bring back the hype to the game in prelude to the next Brawl Talk. And of course, there's always a third option, which is bring even more players to the game at a peak, like what they did with the 5 legendary star drops right after the Godzilla event. Well, with mediocre hype going into the next Brawl Talk, all hope was still not lost. If Brawl Stars could announce a good permanent change to the game instead of the continuous temporary events that were happening, they could definitely increase long-term retention, while attracting more players to the game, like the ranked update way back when. And speaking of ranked, that's all what the next update was about. On February 27th, Brawl Stars dropped a huge ranked rework. This update would bring a completely new ranked pass to the game, both giving more progression overall from ranked for free-to-play players, while also letting Brawl Stars monetize ranked more to put more money into their esports. They also introduced a completely new elo system, with it being easier to get through the first couple of ranks and a lot more difficult to progress through the later ranks. They also did a lot of cool things like improving matchmaking, increasing limits of brawlers maxed out needed to play, and most importantly, removing modifiers. Overall, it was a really good rework to ranked, but at least for most of the player base, it wasn't really that necessary, and they were already playing ranked a lot. At this point, it felt like they were reworking the same exact feature every single year, and were neglecting other features that had a lot of untapped potential, like club events for example. To be fair to them, they also gave a big rework to gadgets that was overall pretty solid, but nothing that really tipped the scales in popularity. This whole rework did bring a little bit of hype back to Brawl Stars, with the Brawl Talk video getting nearly as much views as the Toy Story and Angels vs Demons videos. However, as we can see from the trends graph, the hype quickly died down, and people were starting to leave the game in droves, leading to the worst spot Brawl Stars had been since the summer before the classic event. They needed something big, like the Spongebob event of last year, to return to the big stage. To give credit to them, they started off really well. On April 14th, they announced a play-to-win event, which would give huge rewards with more takedowns, like double star drops, extra mastery and coins, a huge amount of star drops, and an ultra trophy box, something you would normally only get after getting 3,000 trophies. This event was definitely more hype than the kissing event, and was pretty hype in terms of the rewards it was giving, and with a very large amount of progression on offer, and something extremely rare that was also RNG. This was basically the equivalent of the 60 star drops or 10 mega boxes event of last year, an event right after a big dip of popularity in the game that would help set the stage for a very ambitious Brawl Talk that would be very successful. The only problem, well, was with that last part. On April 19th, Brawl Stars dropped a new Brawl Talk, announcing, well, a lot of things. They dropped a completely new rarity out of literally nowhere, called the Ultra Legendary rarity. This rarity costs just a few credits, only 5,500. If that wasn't bad enough, they made an utterly ridiculous early access offer of $50 for her, which you could buy multiple great games with. This was a feature that nobody asked for, wasn't accessible to new players, and wasn't bringing any hype into the game as a result. Back in the old days, legendaries as a whole were very hyped because of the fact that literally anyone could get them, even if you were just starting out. This made new legendary brawlers hype, as you would actually have a chance of unlocking them when they came out. Well, that all changed with ultra legendaries, and more specifically, the first one, Kaze. You literally couldn't get her from a star drop, and most people had her in the back of their star road, or even if they didn't, she would still take an unreasonably long amount of time to unlock. This meant by the time you finally got her, it would be at least a few months to even years. So by itself, it didn't really drum up a lot of hype, and more the opposite actually, as it was extremely disliked by literally 99% of the community. But that was only the second most important part of the update, as they also dropped a huge event alongside of it. Supercell had mentioned earlier that they were doing a collab event around this time, and we were all anticipating a huge collab with a huge company for this event, but we didn't get one. However, we did get a huge collab with Uno for a single challenge and skin. Yeah, to say that was an underwhelming collab would be the understatement of the century. But hey, the Sushi event might be good enough by itself, like the Angels vs Demons event, right? Well, wrong. Once again, I made a whole video dissecting the event piece by piece, so check that out if you want a more detailed analysis of the Sushi event. Anyway, the Sushi event. The event was based around the collection of sushis, who were the opposite of Angels and Demon star drops, or in other words, nerfed star drops. There were also Wasabi powers, which were just a cheap reskin of mutations, with some brawls literally having the same mutation and Wasabi. They also released several game modes like Samurai Smash and Oni Hunt, which were pretty solid, but not enough to right the ship, of course. There was also a reskin Mega Pig called Mega Buffet, which was arguably just as bad as Mega Pig, and didn't really offer that much in terms of resources. To top it all off, they brought back contests, and once again, they were worse than the Angels vs Demon season. Though, to their credit, they were better than the travesty that was the pizza contest. Overall, this update was just filled with reskins, brought nothing really exciting to the game, and added stuff that really did not need to be added. Not only did the update not attract any new players, but it wasn't really lucrative as an existing player, as the update felt very pay to win, with the whole concept of wasabis and sushis especially. However, I do make one big concession. They mentioned that they did have a huge collab planned, which was basically cancelled near last minute. This definitely takes a lot of blame off of the Supercell devs, who had to change everything last minute. So it makes sense why a lot of the event was just reskins, and why the whole thing felt rushed. Apparently, it was rumored that the collab was supposed to be with Naruto, and that makes sense with this whole ninja theme the season had going. If this was the case, this would probably be the biggest collab event yet, or at least on par with Spongebob due to just how popular Naruto is worldwide. Unfortunately, none of this actually happened, and Brawl Stars suffered the consequences, though it wasn't totally their fault, and their popularity sunk even further, with their sister game Clash Royale starting to rise rapidly for reasons I don't feel like going into, or this video would be even longer. At this point, things were looking quite bleak for Brawl Stars, and they needed a miracle to happen. And well, a miracle did happen, but not really what you think. On June 3rd, Brawl Stars announced that they were removing masteries, and were having a going away event for them. With more mastery points unlocked by the community, they would get increasingly better rewards. But most importantly, increased mastery madness, all the way to a mind-numbing 1000% mastery madness. This was absolutely insane and gave an utterly ridiculous amount of progression. However, it didn't really do anything to save the game, and we can look at the chroma credit removal event years ago as to why. These both were probably the most progression-filled events we have ever seen, but there was a big problem with both. They both depended on what you did, not the community as a whole. In an event like 5 legendary star drops, the 100 star drop event, or the dead boxes event, what you did was basically insignificant, as you were almost guaranteed the rewards of the event anyway, so you didn't have to grind that much. That was completely different with the chroma and the mastery event. Sure, the community would help you unlock better mastery madness, but you had to grind like crazy to actually make full use out of it. And that's something a lot of people didn't really want to do. Besides, celebrating removal of a feature rarely ever brings people to the game, unless it's an insanely hated feature, which Mastery was not. Speaking of that, there was literally no reason to remove Masteries. For my third plug of the video, you can check out my video about reworks to find out more about the Mastery rework and others, and why they were actually bad for the game. Anyway, literally no one was asking for this update, and flawed reasoning was given for its removal. But all of that would be forgiven if it was replaced by something better. And guess what? It wasn't. Oh boy, was it not. The feature that replaced Masteries was Records. I know Brawl Stars insists that Records didn't really replace Masteries, but come on. A new feature popping up right after Masteries was removed, with some of the same exact rewards? Yeah, it was a replacement. And it was not a good one at all. Some of the quest thingies were awful to complete, and most of them gave mediocre things in return, like useless record points, a single star drop, or a legendary star drop. Okay, that last one was a joke, but you get my point. To be fair to them, they also made the trophy road a lot better, but I definitely would have preferred the designs to all come out at once instead of half of it still being in progress, though that's a bit of a nitpick. By this point, even hardcore Brawl Stars players were starting to head out. The Mastery Madness event had ended, and now there was literally nothing good to look forward to except misery and suffering. Okay, that might just be my emotional state after writing for this long, but you get my point. To give them credit, Brawl Stars made a post a week or so after these changes saying that they know they did bad and they wanted to improve. The first step to getting better is acknowledging that you have to improve. So kudos to them on this, pun fully intended. They basically said there would be no more early access bundles, and that more records would be released with better rewards, with free-to-play, battle pass rewards increasing, as well as more community events. These are all W changes and hopefully signal a new era in Brawl Stars. The Mortis event then dropped on July 3rd and was all about killing Mortis. We got some rewards, I guess. I don't know. I just want this video to be over. Okay, but seriously, we got some cool rewards, like a few star drops, dead boxes, and a legendary star drop. And overall, you couldn't ask for much more from a mini community event that happened on such a short notice probably. And at this point, this is kind of what Brawl Stars needs. They need to take the baby steps to regain the trust of their core fanbase before they try anything extreme and over the top. But is that gonna happen? I guess we'll find out. Last but not least, earlier this month, Brawl Stars dropped the Angelic event Part 2. And this was solid. The Angel Star drops were of course goated as ever, and the contests were just as beautiful as the day we left them, though the cheese involved was not. Overall, it was just another solid event, and we will get another one in a few weeks with the Demon event Part 2. But to be honest, this whole Part 2 stuff isn't a great look. It shows that they're just trying to recapture the lost glory of the first one, and don't have original ideas for a good event. However, like I said earlier, baby steps are key, and this is not a bad baby step at all. And with that, we're at present day, with Brawl Stars doing a little bit better than it was a month or so ago, but still far from the peaks it once had. So remember the 3 important things that Brawl Stars had once mastered that I mentioned way back when? Well, it's finally time to mention them. If anyone is still watching at this point, which I don't think anyone is. Comment below if you got this far, and yes, that's also a shameless comment bait. I'm really on a roll, aren't I? Anyway, the 3 things are necessary permanent updates to the game, community events that gave a lot of progression, and big events that could also be collabs. These 3 things were vital and put into practice by Supercell last year. They had great permanent updates like Ranked and the Trophy Road rework. They had big collabs like Godzilla, and hyped community events like the 100 star drops that gave a lot of progression. Compare that to this year, where most of the things that do fit these criteria were done quite poorly, like the addition of the ultra legendary rarity, and the Buzz Lightyear and Uno collab. To have any chances at making a comeback, they need to make sure they hit all 3 of these points and do it well. The big collab event, and to a lesser extent, the community event, will help bring new players and hype back to the game, while the permanent features will keep them playing in the long run. All hope is not lost. Even if it seems we're in the trenches right now, we're still doing much better than we were 2 years ago. And with the recent transparency that Brawl Stars had been showing with their changes to records and such, I believe they are on the right direction. And I really hope they don't mess this up, because as much as it seems I, quote, hate the game, all this, quote, hate is just constructive criticism coming from a person that truly wants to see this game do better. And with that, I have nothing more to say. Of course, with something of this magnitude, I missed a whole lot of stuff, like the increasingly annoying and broken brawlers that don't have the same hype as older brawlers did, everything about hybrid charges, and the increasingly mediocre balancing the game seems to have. But let's be real, no one wants to hear me talk for an hour, right? Anyway, thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server. I'm finally done.